Hey everyone, we're live. This is Wally with Supreme Gecko. Thank you very much for joining us today. We have a special guest, Shane Ager from SEWERFest and doing a bunch of other stuff. We're going to talk about what it takes to run a reptile show in just a minute. Thank you again for everyone for joining us. I think this is going to be a blast. I've been doing SEWERFest for a lot of years and I love every single minute of it. But I know there's a lot of work going on with SEWERFest, and we're going to talk to Shane about that in just a second. So let's check out who's here. We've got a lot of people already joining the chat. This is crazy. Corey's here. Crazy Bugs and Pods. Wait a minute. Isn't that the same person? Randa's here. Misopods and me. Hi, Steve. How are you doing? Domestic Dinos. That's an interesting name. Thank you for joining us. And Jay just jumped in. Angie, hi Angie, how are you doing? I used your name in vain today on something. I can't remember what it was. I think I was talking about with Steve about nature photography. So it was all good, Angie. It was all good for once. Kind of crazy there. So again, this is going to be a fun episode. I do want to mention real quick, this is my chance to advertise a little bit for Supreme Gecko. Thank you everyone for watching, but we recently did something special in our Buy Me a Coffee program. If you don't know Buy Me a Coffee, you can check the link in the description. It's your way of supporting us. You'll see that we don't have Patreons, we don't have Super Chats, we don't have any of that. You can go to Buy Me a Coffee in the description link and support us there. But we just did a consultation for one of our members. You can also become a member of Buy Me a Coffee. And we talked to the member, about doing a show. And we talked, it was supposed to be a half hour, and you know how I blab and blab and blab and blab. We went on for, I think it was an hour and a half. And it was just a great discussion. They were taking notes, but we also have the video for them to watch later. So there's a lot of perks to Buy Me a Coffee, a lot of money-saving tips, how to care for your animals better. But also don't forget about that consultation, the free consultation, and also your discounts to the Supreme Gecko store when you become a member to Buy Me a Coffee. Don't forget also, we do bi-weekly, once every 2 weeks, a collab live stream. It's coming up next Thursday, not tomorrow, but next Thursday, where we talk to YouTube creators about making better channels, making better videos. It's a lot of fun, a lot of tips. If you're thinking about getting into YouTube, if you're doing YouTube, there's going to be some information that you can use to make your channel, your videos better. Not that anyone that is talking about in this collab YouTube session, live stream, is an expert. We're all smaller YouTubers, but we share and we try to make it each other better. Let's see. We have Frank that just joined us, the Fishy Plumber. Oh, what a cool name there. That is pretty fun. Meso Dog, JP Lizards, Clay. If I could talk tonight, Kyler's Aquatics and Reptile. Sue's here. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. So you all are not here to talk to me alone. You're here to find out what it takes to do a reptile show. And we have some interesting information, I'm sure, in tonight's episode. I've known Shane for probably, maybe he knows better than I, but I've been doing SEWERFest now for probably about at least 10 years, maybe 15, and known Shane obviously for that long. And SEWERFest is a reptile show that's south of Milwaukee by about 45 minutes. A great show. I've said this over and over and over again. SEWERFest is the mini national reptile show. We have NARBC in Tinley Park, Chicago, and SEWERFest is a little bit below that as far as the crowds, and not quite the number of vendors, but it is of that quality with the vendors and the animals that are coming to SEWERFest, and it grows and grows every single year. It's an honor and privilege for Supreme Gecko to be a part of the SEWERFest show. And again, I thank Shane so much for letting us be a part of the show, but more importantly, being a part of what I feel is the SEWERFest family. Shane has his hands in just about everything. We're going to talk about SEWERFest. We're going to talk about a couple of other things tonight. Let's go ahead and bring on Shane. Shane, can you hear us?
How are we doing?
We're doing good. So far, this is fun. I think the rest of the show is going to be a lot of fun too. Again, I've known you for give me a number. What, 12, 13, 14 years?
Well, did you ever vend at our old location?
The one where some of the vendors were in the basement, some were up on the stage.
Yeah.
Yes. Venomous.
Yes. So if you were at that location, you've probably been with us for about 15 years then.
Oh my gosh, how time flies. It feels like, well, it feels like 15 years.
That's for sure. That is for sure.
What's cool about SEWERFest, we're going to talk more about SEWERFest in just a second. I want to find out more about Shane, but what's cool about SEWERFest is I've been fortunate enough to see it grow so much and continue to grow. That's the fun part for me. But as I mentioned, tell me more about Shane. We're going to get into the specifics of how you coordinate a large reptile show like SEWERFest, but tell me a little bit more about Shane. What's driving Shane? What do you do in your personal life? What keeps you busy?
What's driving Shane is 4 kids and a wife that he's got to be financially responsible for. So that's the driver. That's what keeps me motivated out there having fun. But yeah, I've got 4 amazing kids. They all help me out with the reptile show. My wife, as far as I know, if anybody else wants to prove me wrong, is the only other person besides myself that's been to literally every SEWERFest. She's been there with me through all of this from the start. And she's the person taking your money at the door. I think she gives it all to me to pay the bills, but we see from there how it's going to go. But that's kind of what drives me. I've been keeping reptiles since I was 9 years old. And so it's just always been kind of a passion for me. I got into them when the cool neighbor down the street had a tank full of anoles, and I just said, I got to do that. I got to have, some of these lizards myself. So since I was 9, I've been hooked and I've been in it, and it's kind of what's kept me motivated and wanting to keep SEWERFest going.
What were your first animals? I mean, you said that you kind of started with that neighbor that kept some reptiles, but did you do any other animals as a kid as well? And what kind of animals did you start off with?
So my mom was always very supportive of us having pets. So there was always dog, cat, in the house, that kind of a thing. And we had a 29-gallon fish tank forever. And I always, that tank, was an amazing tank. And my mom always kind of nurtured that. My first personal pet was actually some newts, some California newts, which are probably actually Oregon newts, depending on who wants to say what, species wise. But some newts were the first, and then the first actual reptile I had was a spiny-tailed iguana.
Oh my gosh! Wow. Is that
because I wanted, as a kid, I wanted the big iguana, and I went into the local pet store, and they didn't happen to have any green iguanas the day I was, okayed to get one, but they did have the spiny-tailed iguana, and so I got it. Did all the things I probably was never supposed to do with a spiny-tailed iguana. Kept it more like a green iguana. Learned from those mistakes. Had them for about 10 years, that kind of a thing. And I've just been hooked since.
Wow. No leopard geckos. You didn't start with a leopard gecko. You just had to jump right into an iguana.
Yeah, I didn't get leopard geckos probably for about another 5 years. And admittingly, I've now had leopard geckos ever since. And they've been, a part of my collection, this entire time. And my youngest son is 15, and he's got a group of leopard geckos that he really enjoys. And so, they're definitely a part of me, but no, I jumped straight to the iguana and kept just a whole bunch of different things. There was an iguana early. There was a Pac-Man frog early. And then I got, luckily not truly bit, but I got figuratively bit by the tokay gecko bug. And that was the first gecko I ever had, was a tokay.
And tokays it's weird. Tokays are super hot right now. You go to a pet store, 10 or 15 years ago, and you're paying, $299 for a tokay gecko. Maybe not that low, but now it's like $200, $300. It's crazy.
Yeah, people are just, luckily captive breeding them now and making so we've got, nicer animals, but also better looking animals and healthier animals.
What other pets right now are you keeping? Are you into fish? It seems like some of our conversations. The thing is, whenever Shane is doing a reptile show, supporting or promoting, gosh, I almost used the wrong Z word there. Whenever Shane is supporting, representing ZooMed, I stop by the booth and I feel real awkward because you have like 1,000 people already waiting, and I say, hi, how are you doing? And I try to get out of there as quick as possible. Somehow we always seem to kind of turn the conversation to fish.
So yeah, like I said, my mom had that 29-gallon fish tank as a kid. That that was kind of one of those things that really got us into abnormal pets as much as they may not be that abnormal. And so I've always kind of been into fish, and I've always dabbled around the fish world and really got into cichlids for a while. One thing to another, moving and all that. You tanks change. Currently, I have a 280-gallon aquarium that has a fly river turtle, and then about 30 some odd fish, random different fish inside of there.
Some mbunas and
no African cichlids on this one.
Okay.
This one, it's actually a little bit more of a community style tank. Basically, my kids said I had to have pretty fish that they liked. And so we went that route with it. Got some really nice angelfish. Just picked up some Hecali cichlids, the Geophagus hecali, picked up for there. Loving those. And so yeah, Congo tetras, most underrated fish to me is Congo tetra. But
yes, big Congos in a group of about 10 to 20, which you never ever see.
No.
I relate that kind of a look and feel to a tank full of the ruby barbs, the red barbs in a green planted aquascape tank. You get a group of 15 or 20 of those ruby barbs swimming around in the red against the green. Congos catch that light and reflect. Oh, good stuff.
Yeah,
really
beautiful
stuff. Tell me more about your part in Zillow. And folks, we're going to talk about SEWERFest in just a minute, but I want to get some background here from Shane as far as who he is. What is your part with ZooMed?
So I am the Western Midwest sales director for ZooMed. So basically, I have the most amazing job on earth. I get paid by a guy to go around and visit pet stores and talk about pets and reptiles with them. I joke with my kids. I have two in college, trying to figure out what they want to be, as they grow up. And I tell them all the time, when I was 19, nobody even told me that somebody would pay me to visit pet stores. And now I'm basically living what, could basically, be a dream. I just drive around, I visit the pet stores. We talk about the animals in their stores, products that they can have, all those different kinds of things. And it's a great little thing to do.
Life is good. I had a professor that used to say that all the time. Life is good. Yeah. I can't imagine that. I feel blessed, obviously, that I get to work with animals and go downstairs every single day and open up the incubator and see the babies, hopefully the babies, look under a rock and find some eggs. But I tell you what, but then I come up here and I do social media all day and answer questions, which is really fun and cool. But it's not like talking in a group of people, about animals. That has to be just a blast.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Today I'm in Minnesota. I live in northern Illinois now because of work. But today I'm in Minnesota right now, and in the middle of the day I had to respond to emails. So there I was, literally on the Mississippi River outside of La Crosse, sending emails because somebody, somebody's got to get their info right away, and you got to take care of that and be on top of it. So, there's some of those little things. It's not all pet stores. There's a lot of miles and things in between, and there's some computer work, but you can't beat it.
And he's asking knowingly, but you're headed to Minnesota for what purpose?
I'm heading up to visit a few different pet stores up here. Tomorrow, I will have the good fortune to visit a few different of my best stores, my most favorite stores. Pet Expo in Mankato, Minnesota, great people. Twin Cities Reptiles in St. Paul, Minnesota. And then I somehow got talked into having dinner with this couple named Ed and Emily from Snake Discovery because they also have a pet store. So I got to be nice to them now because they now own a pet store. And so, yeah, we're having dinner tomorrow, talking business.
Snake Discoveries, we got the chance to meet up with Emily and Ed Saturday. Yeah, Friday at Madison Area Herp Society. They were giving a presentation. And I had some reservations because every time I walk past Crystal, our granddaughter, she's on YouTube and she's either looking at dance and makeup and stuff. She's an 11-year-old girl. But once in a while, she'll be going, Grandpa, look at this snake hatching out. And it's Snake Discoveries. Gosh darn it, Crystal, watch Supreme Gecko on YouTube too. So going up Friday, Emily and Ed, we're going to stop Snake Discoveries, this channel that Crystal always watches instead of mine. And I tell you what, seriously, in all seriousness, folks, Emily and Ed are just the most down-to-earth people, the nicest folks, and just like this, can talk to you about animals. So you could just see the passion, you can see the love, and that's so cool. It really is.
Yeah, they've been great people to get to know. I've gotten to know them over the last couple of years. And one of the biggest tidbits I could give another YouTuber, but we're gonna talk about it when I talk about the shows. But one of the biggest things that I've learned from them is they truly appreciate every one of their fans. And it's not just another, hey, we got another click, we got another click, we got another click. It's definitely, we appreciate every person, that's a fan of it. And, I like to say that's the same attitude I try to have with every person that walks in that door at SEWERFest is just, you're not just another person. It's somebody else that's, took the time to come and visit this little reptile show that I started.
Wait a second. You stopped by the table. You talked to me personally, so I'm not like your favorite vendor, and you don't know just me and me alone. You know everybody there and talk the same way to everybody.
I do. I wish I knew everybody. I wish there's still a few vendors. I had a vendor this year go, Shane, I vended like 3 years ago, and I go, sorry.
No.
Yeah, sometimes it's. This is year 23. There's been hundreds of vendors over the years. And as much as I appreciate every one of them, I'm really bad at names. So
not as bad as me. And every one of our community here that watch Supreme Gecko on YouTube will know that unless, you're in every single stream, every single day, every single week, I'm going to forget your name. I'm terrible with that. I want to come back to a couple of questions real quick before we jump into some details here. So JP asks, Shane, can you sell me an extra Zoom Ed door? I broke mine. So I'll let you go ahead and connect with JP offline so you can get him that Zoom Ed door. He's joking.
Well, I'm going to give a real quick, easy plug for him because I love the company Zoom Ed that I work for. Zoom Ed's a great company. We're not this big corporate company that ignores those kinds of things. It's easy, JP. Call up Zoom Ed's customer service. They'll take care of you. If you don't want to call them, you want to email them, zoomed@zoomed.com. They'll take care of you. They've got all the replacement doors. They can be a little bit tricky to replace and maybe a little bit more scary to replace than tricky because you're always worried you're going to break something. But I've taken on and off doors to do different projects and stuff. They're easy to do, but I can't say more about Zoom Ed's customer service. They're great. The people that work in there are great people. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to get Jen. JP, tell Jen Shane sent you. She'll take care of you. Don't worry.
That's amazing. Again, I threw that up just kind of more of a joke, but again, thank you very much. And while I'm thanking you, I'll thank you for all the support that you've given. Plug on my end, but more. Thank you for all the support Zoom Ed has given to the 12 Supreme Days of Christmas and everything that we try to do in December with amazing gifts every single year. So thank you again, Zoom Ed.
Hey, no.
And Shane, I know you're a big part of that.
Yeah.
I have My Isopods and Me. Shane, do you know of a good recommended show here in Michigan by chance? If not, can you make one? Ha, ha, ha. So, Steve, I'll say this. If it's Sunday, SEWERFest is Sunday. If you show up from Michigan, I know you're not that far up north Michigan, come over to Racine, Sturtevant, and I'll pay for your VIP ticket. I'll walk to the door and pay for your VIP ticket when you show up. And that's a serious offer. But taking on his question, do you know of a good show in Michigan?
So the main show that I know of in Michigan would be the Taylor, Michigan show. And the biggest kind of recommendation that I can give you off of that is the good people at Pangea go and vend it. So if the good people at Pangea are willing to go vend it, it's got to be worth your time to go do it. I've never personally been. I actually think Michigan is an underrated vacation state, and I need to get back over there more. I was over there for a little vacation last year, and I want to get back more. And so maybe next year I'll go, or later this year, I'll go visit them and tour the show as well.
And I don't know if that's the Kalamazoo show. I know Matt Parks from Pangea has an amazing array of hard goods and amazing animals. Great recommendation. Fantastic recommendation. And if I'm looking a lot to the side, I'm looking at the chat, Shane. I'm not ignoring you.
No worries.
You were speaking of Michigan. We're planning a trip, and Steve, maybe you and I should talk, but we're planning a trip up, not, obviously this weekend, but next weekend for the Tulip Festival in Holland, taking our granddaughter up and enjoying that. So
Holland was one of the places I stayed at last year. It's beautiful, right by the Lake Michigan. Need to see Lake Michigan from the opposite side.
There you go. Absolutely. And it's not for us. And, for me in Milwaukee, it's not that far of a drive at all. We have Robert Smithson. SEWERFest supports their friends. Friends get tables to vend. That's awesome. Cool comment.
I can't do this show without the amazing vendors that we have. And that sounds like a cliche, just pitch line to try to make everybody do it. But the truth is we get repeat shoppers because the vendors make us look good. And so we take care of those vendors so they keep making us look good. So that way the people keep coming back. It's a circle. It's all got to work together. And as long as we do that, everything's good. And I like to view, the vendors as our friends, and, we try to work with each other to make sure everybody's in a good spot so we can all have a successful weekend.
There's always going to be some bad apples in anything that you do. If you do dog shows, there's going to be some bad apples. But I'll tell you what, at SEWERFest, if I don't have it, I'm going to point you. I might even walk you over to another table that has it. If I do leopard geckos and you look at my table and say, yeah, I'm looking more for something like this, I'm going to say, I don't have it. And I'm not going to try to sell you one that I already have. Or a crested gecko, I'm going to say, you know what? Dab Exotics probably has what you're looking for. And I think that everybody, it's not me, it's everybody there is under the same thing, that if we help a customer at SEWERFest, and it's not, selling one of our animals, they're going to come back. They're going to appreciate that, and they're going to come back to SEWERFest. And maybe the next show or the 2 shows from now, they might buy from us too. So great community at SEWERFest.
Yeah, it's one of the best things about the show. But I also think, in the animal hobby, when the animal hobby is done correctly, and I see this at pet stores, I see this at the show, all of those things. If everybody works together, people stay around longer, people grow, they keep more animals. And you're exactly right. If you just said, no, sorry, I don't have that, maybe you want to buy this one instead, and you kind of disregard what that person's real want and need was, maybe they just don't show up for you or our show at all.
Kind of feels like it's a little pushy, and I wouldn't do that personally because it feels pushy, but it feels so good if somebody doesn't buy from my table but goes over to John or Jim or Sally and buys a leopard gecko and then comes back around, swings back around. Look what I found, and boy, that's smoking cool for me because I recommended somebody and they found what they were looking for. So,
yep.
I just posted a question. Who's gone in our chat? We have 23 people right now in our chat. Who's visited a reptile show? I want to see some answers popping up here. Have you guys actually gone to a reptile show, and what's been your experience going to a reptile show? Let me get over to a question here. Bear with me for a second. So tell me exactly what SEWERFest is. We know it's a reptile show, but tell me more details about what this show is. How many times a year? how many vendors, what you normally expect for number of vendors, not specifics with number of people walking through the door, but kind of a general kind of point there.
So SEWERFest is it's really the Southeast Wisconsin Exotic Reptile Festival. We started back in 2001, and we were trying to come up with a catchy name. I just wanted something fun, so I came up with SEWERFest. I had a partner there when we started the show. Was a guy who worked in a pet store, Worth, at the time, and from the beginning, our entire goal with the show was just to put quality first, because what we saw working in the store was too often people would go to lesser quality stores, lesser quality reptile shows, and they'd buy fresh wild caught animals that had maybe never been fed before in captivity and things like that. And we wanted to make sure that when people bought animals from us at both the store we were working at, but also at the reptile show, we wanted to make sure that they were getting a successful animal that they were going to be able to take home and just have nothing but happiness right away with. And so we've been dedicated since the beginning. It's a captive bred only reptile show. So that way customer comes in, they're able to get really good quality animals, but we're also rewarding the breeders that have taken the time to put all their efforts behind it, that are putting in for all the animals that are just really, really good quality animals for them. So we want to make sure that, we support that, and we do that. The show is 3 times a year. We do an April show, August, and November. Try to spread it out so that way there's a little bit of time in between the shows. Breeders can get more eggs hatching, things like that. People can see the other shows around, and see what other people are doing, other parts of the state, the country, all of that, and they can see what else is going on with it. But we also just don't want to dilute the area. We see that if there's too many shows in an area at one given point in time, people just kind of get a little bit burnt out on maybe buying things as often or any of that. And only person that's successful then is myself and the guy selling the roaches and crickets and stuff, and that's all that wins when there's too many of them. So we keep it a little bit down to 3, just to make sure there's enough for everybody. And it seems to work out pretty well.
That's a hard balancing act. And I know from the beginning, again, I'll go back to the 15 years or so that I've been going to SEWERFest. There's been so many changes. Tell us about SEWERFest in the good old days, and tell us about where it is now and some of those changes that you've incorporated to make it what I feel, at least personally, is a much better show.
Sure. So the changes? Back in 2001, we started out at a country club of all places, and I remember getting a vendor calling me up and going, "Hey, do I have to wear a tie? This is a country club." And I go, No, it's a public country club. Anybody can show up. We're good to go. And we started off, it was about 35, 40 tables at that first show, in there. And it was a really simple laid back, environment. But when we went to go see if we could start this show, we had to go talk to, the local town and find out what, kind of different rules and all that were going to be out there for us. What, all the regulations were. So we had to figure out where we were going to be with it. And what ended up happening is they walked us through everything. They were really polite with us, and they figured out that the only rules that were going to be applied to us was there was rules that applied to like circuses and things like that. So we would have to follow that because we were what they called an itinerant show. And so we had to, go with that because we were a show that, was just going to come in once or twice a year, a couple of times. We were going to do our things. We weren't going to be a permanent standing thing. So it allowed us to have, some different things like that. The only thing that was just a hard no for them in this town was there was no crocodilians. And so we went, okay, we can deal with that. But because we were an itinerant show, we were open that we could have venomous. Venomous was under the itinerant show allowed things. Now, they also would have allowed us to have hippos and rhinos and elephants and a bunch of things like that. But we've been dedicated since the beginning that we're a reptile show. So we were like, we'll leave the hippos for somebody else. But we let venomous, we let venomous in, and it was a great draw in the early days. But just as we saw more and more families coming in, it was something, we wanted to make sure that we were making sure everybody was in a safe place and things like that. And with venomous being such a specialty kind of a thing, we felt it was just in the best interest to let those people seek each other out, find each other, and see where they could go with it. around 2007, after about 6-7 years of being in business, I had a partner change. The person I started the Reptile Show with just gotten a lot of things going on in his life and decided it just wasn't for him anymore. So brought on a new partner at that point. New partner helped me find the new location. We moved to the new location. The new location actually turned around because it's in a new town. Technically, they said, no, you can't have venomous, that kind of thing. So it was like, okay, where we were already on a little bit on the border of whether or not we should let it still be at the show. They said no. So the new town said no. So that changed that around a little bit, but we ended up at the Fountain Banquet Hall where we're currently at. It's a great, wonderful banquet hall. We've always loved that we were able to put it on in just a really welcoming environment, starting with the country club and now the banquet hall where we're at, where everybody's going to feel just nice and comfortable. We get rid of some of those like reptile preconceptions of it. We're going to go to some weird dungeon or things like that for a reptile show. And I get people all the time that are, it's not what they're expecting. On the other hand, it's really funny when people come to tour the banquet hall during the reptile show because they want to use it for a wedding, and they look around and there's just snakes everywhere. But they seem to sell the place out and use it a lot for different events. But it is definitely a fun little place to be at. So we have fun with it. But overall, yeah, we went from that first show. I'm pretty sure was about like I said, about 35 tables. And now we're at about 100 tables. I am doing everything I can to figure out how to fit more tables inside of the space we've got. During the pandemic, we tried playing around with using the second hall at the venue and adding more tables over there. The problem is the rooms are just not joined with each other, so there was no flow to it. And sadly, just the fun environment that we are able to have in our hall was not carried over to that second hall. So it was, just a really good, idea for us to just step back from it and stick with what worked for our customers and everything. Because sure, I might be able to make more money selling more tables and opening up that hall, that kind of a thing. But people aren't happy. Money wasn't making people happy. And in the end, I just saw that as a sign towards, people being upset with the show. So we don't want that.
And you and I talked a little bit about this, and I got some feedback from some of the other vendors that whether they were in room 1 or room 2, it's always an issue if it's cold and snowy or rainy, and getting people from room 1 over to room 2, and there were thoughts about decreasing the cost per table. It feels like a show when you have everybody in one room, obviously, but I think that you did as much as you possibly could to try to bring this whole thing together. And then I'm going to bring up the C word. COVID hit, and it changed everything. It changed everything. It stopped everything. Then it changed everything. And I think that as you kept everything in one room, you kind of opened up the space a little bit, and there's actually room to walk down the aisles and actually have strollers that you can push. He talks about an issue on Facebook that's come up many times about another show. There's actually room to walk around and talk to the vendors and not wait, and huge lines to move from one table to the next that you don't want to see anyways. So
yeah,
little editorial there, but I think you've done a great job doing what you can do with the space that you have, which is a great space. The only thing, and it's much better now, but I remember in some of the earlier days in that venue that the lighting was a little bit darker. And I remember and I just talked to the person that I had the consultation about doing a show a couple of days ago about doing your show, SEWERFest, and going in and start unboxing the animals and open up the electric box that we carry to shows. And no lights. We had taken the lights out for some reason. I have no clue why. Opened the box, no lights. I looked at Christopher, my oldest son, and I said, we're done. We're done. This is not going to be a good show. And I think we did probably a quarter of what we normally do, simply because the lighting was a little bit subdued, which you improved greatly. That's, if I were to say anything, that would be the only comment that wouldn't be a positive comment. But there's so many good things,
The funny thing about that is I don't know if it was that exact same show. I don't know if it was, you know, that very show, but we had a conversation with the owner of the banquet hall, and he asked us, you know, like anything we could do better, and we simply said, yeah, there could just be more lights on inside of here. We said, even though all the people bring, and you know, every good vendor is going to put lights on their animals just to make them show off and pop and all that, just a little bit more light in here to open it up and brighten it up. And we kind of said, you know, you're doing other events, and I'm willing to bet when there's the coin show there, the coin guys don't bring out as many lights, but having more lights in there would help. Sure enough, the great guy that he was, he had new lights in there by the next show that we had. And so we put more lights in there. And Chuck was a great guy. Chuck sadly passed away from ALS a couple of years ago. His daughter's running it, and she's doing an amazing job now with the venue. And they take great care of us. I hate to say it. You know, some days I feel like we've outgrown that space, and I don't want to leave it because they're great people and they take care of us. But, you know, it's, you know, we're filling that space as best as we can because we love being there.
I can't imagine the work that that's involved. And I'm going to ask you that question in just a second. I want to get to something else real quick here before that. But the work involved, not just to set up this show coming up, you know, in a couple of days, but to plan forward and always be looking at changes and things that you want to do. But I do want to say this. I asked that question about, do you go to reptile shows? And Randa says, I go to every one I can because I have a problem. Yep.
Hey, I'm glad to be the solution.
Yep.
If that's what we can do, I will be the solution to your problem. And if that's your problem, man, that's a great problem to solve. I love it.
We have another. I'm going to lead into this point with a question that I have. We love Tinley and shows in the Midwest. Variety is key. It's a shame we don't see our favorite vendors at every show, though. Word has it some shows handpick who gets to come. Glad you don't do that. And this isn't about that comment, about, you know, some of the comments that I made earlier. It's more about, do you have a waiting list? Is there a waiting list to get into SEWERFest? And how do you deal when you're full and you have people asking you to join?
There is a waiting list, and every time I have to tell somebody no, especially when it's somebody who has been a previous vendor and now we've already filled up and I don't have place for them, you know, and I've got to say, I'm really sorry. I don't have, you know, a place for you to go. I wish I did, you know, and it's definitely one of those things that I hate, because I just know, you know, it's one less person that's got a place to be able to be successful with us. But as far as addressing, you know, like hand picking vendors for the show, you know, there's a couple parts that go to it. And I don't want to look at it as I'm only letting in people I like, because every year I let in a few new vendors just to go, who's got what? Who's got something a little bit different? Who might I learn something from? You know, who can give us that extra variety? You know, that kind of a thing. Now, that being said, though, I had to explain to somebody, you know, this year, if you showed up and when I was at that point when I probably had about like 7-8 tables left, and you told me you had isopods and that's what you wanted to sell at the show, I had to tell you no. And I was, you know, really sorry, but I just couldn't sell another table for people with isopods. And it simply goes into the idea that, like a retail store, there's only so much space for each style of product. And in this case, the products are the animals. And as much as I would like it that we would have a perfectly even amount of everything, and we'd have more of this, that, and the other thing, and I'd love that I could just have space for everybody to show up, it's just not realistic. So at a certain point, I've got to hold back a couple of tables and hope that I, you know, or put that isopod person on hold and say, we're going to save it for somebody that's got something that I don't already have too many of, you know. In the Midwest, you know, I've been fortunate enough, between work and just the fact that I love to travel as a whole, that I've seen shows across the entire country, and every region I go to has just a little bit different thing that they do better than the others. You'll see more chameleons at a reptile show in California than you will anywhere else. There's more turtles at a show in Florida than anywhere else. There are more geckos and isopods in the Midwest than you see anywhere else. And it's the way that it is. It's what the people here do. The two things work hand in hand together with each other. But because of that, we're always going to have more of those at the show than we might have, of the other things. But at a certain point, it also just means I have to cut them off at a certain point. And sometimes I cut off a person I like.
You say, choosing between people that you like and don't like. I'm just shocked that, you don't like me that much. And I'm still vending at your show. It's incredible. I tell that to Nanette at the end of every show. It's like, he hates my guts, but he lets me vent. I don't get it. We've got
it's always the things where we look at it, and every once in a while, there'll be that one person where you're just like, hey, is there a reason you haven't registered yet? Your stuff would be really good at my show to fill in this little niche thing, and that kind of a thing. And, it is what it is. And, somebody's got something that comes up, and hey, we'll see you again at the next show, and, that kind of a thing. But yeah, you try to make sure that you can have spots for everybody, but it just doesn't always work out that way.
How do you deal with vendors that are hit and miss? As far as, I'm at this show, then I miss a show, then I'm at a couple more shows, and no, I can't make it this next show. I can't make it the show after that. But the show after that, I want to come to. How do you deal with that inconsistency?
So what we do with our table registration is we open up our table registration at the beginning of every year, and you can register for all 3 shows for that year. And so what I just tell people is at a certain point, I'm going to run out of every, tables for every show. And so right now I can tell you, I've already put on hold taking registrations for our August show. So for right now, I've got to focus on April. So then come May 1st, I'll start looking at how many more tables I can possibly fill, for that August show. We've already got a bunch of people that have registered. You've already registered for that show. You've already got your space filled in there. And so when we get a couple of those people that might be, back and forth on those shows, the best thing I can tell them is, hey, pick out those shows you're going to do, register early in the year. We'll get you locked in. But if it rolls around and somebody calls me, and I just had somebody do this 2 days ago, somebody that often would vend with us, and he goes, hey, any chance you got a table open this weekend? No, I don't. Sorry. And all I can tell him is send me a registration form for August. I'll do my best to find you a spot.
And again, that has to be super, super tough to manage information like that, to manage, this waiting list kind of situation with, how dependable are they? They said that they were going to sign up, but, I know a week from the show, they're maybe not going to be there. It's got to be just so difficult.
And that's one of those things also, we know we've got those really good vendors that are, consistent with us. And so obviously I make priority for the people that have made us a priority.
And that's, in my mind, that's fair enough. I'm flying solo. I mentioned this to Shane before, but I'm flying solo tonight without Nanette hitting the comments. I'm throwing comments all over the place, folks. Bear with me, because I throw it on the screen, then I take it down. I do want to ask, Shane, before, Steve, you have a great comment. I'll get to yours. What are the advantages? And I'm going to try as hard as I can not to answer for you on this question. What are the advantages or disadvantages of going to a reptile show versus looking online or going to a pet shop?
Okay, so I'm going to throw a really weird, crazy statement to you that most people never understand. So I've been keeping reptiles for 34 years now. I currently have 60 some reptiles. We don't talk about the real number because my wife might see this. I've had hundreds of reptiles over the years and all that. I've only ever purchased one animal sight unseen. In all those years. And that was a tortoise I was able to get from a friend of a friend who I now consider a friend, kind of a thing. And it was one of those, like, he vouched for him as highly as possible as ever. And so I'm the guy that doesn't buy online. And the reason I don't buy online is because I did work in stores for 10 years, and we bought animals off of a price list with some pictures and things like that. And as much as we could vet great suppliers for animals, every once in a while, one slips past them even. And so now I've got to deal with that, and I always dealt with good suppliers of those animals, so they always took care of us, and we never had a problem with it. But every once in a while, I'd see that, and it always makes me think, well, they took care of us because we were loyal to them, and so, you know, we had a good relationship. But what about the guy that's just the random guy online who doesn't care, and he just needs to get rid of his animals? And I don't want to be caught up in that. Whether or not to buy from a reptile show or buy from a reptile store or a pet store in general,
Yeah.
there's two really easy answers for me for that. Reptile show, dealing directly with the breeder. The breeder's going to be able to tell you exactly how he's kept the animal, how he's kept the parents, he or she, how they've kept the animal, how they've kept the parents, how they do their general routine and what works for them. And you can see that animal directly in front of you. You can see how it goes. So you can have that one-on-one great conversation. The only downfall there is, and it's sometimes the breeder side and sometimes the buyer side, but I get a whole lot of calls after the show. I bought an animal from a breeder, but I don't know who they are. And now I've got another question. And so I always say the biggest downfall I see of the reptile show side can be that follow-up. Well, now what? Now, I bought the ball python and it doesn't eat 3 weeks later. Now what do I do? And that's where I resort back to the good reptile store. The good reptile store, you can walk in, hound them for an hour with all of your questions, and then you buy the animal, you take them home. You have a problem, you know where his store's at. You know where to go get a hold of him. You remember where that is, you know. And so sometimes a little bit of that communication afterwards, if that's something you're going to need, man, that's why reptile stores, pet stores in general, that's why they're the foundation of our industry, is because they can do that, you know. And the beauty of it is, and of my job, I've been able, you know, because of my jobs, I've been able to, you know, build those relationships with the pet stores. And we're going to get a dozen pet stores that'll show up at the reptile show to build relationships with the breeders so they can buy quality animals as well. And they can put, you know, really good stock in their stores and be able to take care of everybody. And so it becomes a win-win when everybody can work with each other that way. But, you know, as a consumer, I want to be able to know, you know, that I've got somebody to follow up to. That's where that reptile store really comes out as a partner for them.
Outstanding answer. Hey, viewers, if you vend reptile shows, I know there's one or two of you doing that. Make a comment in the comments that you vend at reptile shows, and I'll throw this comment out to you specifically, playing off what you just exactly said. You know me, I love pet shops. I love buying online, and I can edit some of this out so Nanette and your wife doesn't, you know, hear some of this stuff. I love buying online, but like you said, I go to specific people, or I'm looking for specific answers and animals, and I'm asking a lot of questions. Give me an age. Give me, have they bred before? When's the last time? And I'll throw 20 questions all in one email and say, answer these 20 questions instead of going back and forth, back and forth. But anyways, reptile shows. I love reptile shows. I wouldn't be doing them if I didn't love every minute of being at well, I don't like cleanup. I hate packing, but Nanette always does that, so it doesn't matter. I love reptile shows because I can tell people, I'm sorry, I'm jumping the point. The point that I was going to make was, if you vend reptile shows, when you finish a sale, hand a business card. Don't let somebody walk away from your table without handing a business card to them, and tell them, if you look them in the eye, folks, look them in the eye. And if you don't get this when you buy at a reptile store, reptile show, make sure the vendor does this. Look them in the eye and say, if you have any questions whatsoever, contact me tomorrow or a week or a month, whatever. Contact me and ask me. I'd much rather have somebody contacting me and saying, I have some issues with, they're not eating, rather than somebody a month later contacting me with the worst case scenario. So that's what you guys can do if you vend reptile shows. But my other point that I was going around was, I love doing reptile shows because it's an opportunity. Here's my favorite part of reptile shows. And I say this all the time, but reptile shows are a place where, if you're getting into leopard geckos, or you're getting more into leopard geckos, or any animal substitute, you know, leopard geckos, reptile shows is your chance to walk over to Wally's table or John's table or Sally's table and talk to all three people about, so what's your favorite morph and why do you like that morph of leopard geckos? And then talk to the next person, and then take all those answers and combine them, and then think of how that fits what your plans are or what you're capable of doing with reptiles. take 3 answers and get 3 different opinions from 3 people that are, doing, whether it's me or anybody else at especially SEWERFest. Talk to them and find out what they do. It's a great chance to get lots of information all at one time and balance that information.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, anytime you can talk to multiple people and get multiple ideas and pick little parts from here and there and how people do things, it's a huge win. My biggest gripe in the reptile industry right now is the people who tell everybody this is the exact way you do this. There's one way, you have to do it this way. And I sit back and I go, I've seen 100 different ways to keep a bearded dragon, and they all work. And those things can be really successful, and hear the guy out. Why are you doing something that way? Why are you going about it that way? And it's amazing, how much different little inspiration you can get by just talking with people and going, what's the little different things that you do that I don't do that somebody could help me with?
Yes. I think we're all, again, 20 some years of keeping reptiles. And I find that I'm no smarter today than I was 20 years ago because I'm learning something new and different today that I didn't know, 20 years ago. Every day is a learning experience. Looking at the animals, talking to somebody online every day, I feel like I'm dumber and dumber for not knowing that, 2 years ago. So let me see if I can get back up to that comment. Okay. This is one that I really, really have in my notes to ask you, and I'm going to throw it on the screen. This is from Isopods with me. What are things to look for those who are new or newer to reptile shows? What are things to look for to avoid? And I'll play that with, I'm walking into a reptile show for the SEWERFest for the first time. What should I expect to see there? And then tag on to that, Shane. What you should look for specifically, from different tables, and what you should kind of avoid.
So the reason you should walk into SEWERFest is because we're going to cut out a lot of those problems of things that you need to avoid, by having quality breeders with quality captive bred animals. Now, that said, you should look for the things that you're simply just going to normally look for, when you're buying an animal from anywhere. Are the animals crowded in the containers that they're in? You don't want those things, because if they're crowded here at the show, are they crowded back in their, their cages back at the breeder's facility? Those kinds of things. Are they making shortcuts here? If they're making them at the show where they're presenting that animal to you, are they making shortcuts when you can't see it? Those would be the concerns I would have. But now on top of that, what does the enclosure look like when you're buying this animal? A lot of geckos and stuff get sold in deli cups because there's a whole bunch of reasons we sell them in deli cups, and a lot of people don't understand them. But the simplest answer that most people don't realize when we sell in deli cups is because the animals can't hurt themselves in it. It's harder for them to fall. It's harder for them to, climb up and break a leg or do any of those kinds of things because they're in a small enclosed space. The deli cups really help make things safe.
But they're in deli cups. That's number one. That's inhumane to keep an animal in a deli cup for, 6 hours. That's terrible. We're cruel. What the heck are we thinking putting an animal in a deli cup? Come on. What kind of show do you run?
And in all honesty, the part that really scares people is when I tell them, and it should be black if we're transporting it, because that way they don't see the other things that would freak them out to make them want to fall and make them want to hurt themselves. Obviously, at a reptile show, we need to see them. So having, a clear deli cup is the ideal way to go. But look in the deli cup. Is there feces in there? Okay. If there's feces, is it good looking feces? Is it solid or is it runny? That can give you an idea of stressed out. Now,
good point.
As the book says, everything poops. So obviously at some point in time, some of these animals might have pooped in there. But if you look in the deli cup and there's 3 or 4, piles of feces, is he living in this deli cup? Is that where this breeder just goes show to show to show? And now, now we have a problem, and now the animals aren't being kept, very good care of. Those are the little things, that I look for. For a breeder, the things to look for at a show are ways that you can do your show setup better. So,
oh my gosh, great answer.
Nice looking tablecloth, really good lighting, better displays of how you have your caging, whether it's deli cup, whether it's an acrylic rack, however you've got your setup at the show, walk around the show and go, Wally's got a crowd over there. What's Wally doing better than me so that I know I can get a crowd at my table? But then you also have to look at Wally's table and go, okay, what did Wally do wrong that I do better?
Yes.
And now you go back to your table and you make sure you actually are doing it better. That's one of those things. Sometimes we think our table looks great, but then when we go back and look at it from an outsider's perspective, we go, I should do that a little bit better. My business cards are in the back. They should be out front where somebody can see them a little bit easier. So
I can't believe you said that, because I can't more strongly stress that when you're a breeder or you're getting into, selling at shows for the first time. And again, I just had this conversation about doing shows, and that was one of the most important things that I talked about was walk around. And I say that, and I don't walk around at a show, but walk around. And if you see something really cool, can I take your business card? Take their business card, look at their thing, and I really like that. And walk maybe a couple of tables. I would walk a couple of tables away and get out of their way, and I'd write cool lights or love their banner. Take your phone out. Can I take a picture of your animals? And click, and then their business card, cool lights, do something similar. Or like you said, God, Wally, has all of his animals in deli cups. Never, ever, ever do that. And write that on that business card. Don't do it like Supreme Gecko has it set up. And here's another important thing. If you see something really cool with somebody's display, and I'm kind of, again, stealing your thoughts here, and talking for you, but if you see something that's really cool and there's not a crowd in front, if there's a crowd, come back in an hour. If there isn't a crowd, say, I love your lights. Would you mind telling me where you got your lights? Every vendor should be able to answer a question similar to that. And if they say, well, I don't want to give away it, or I'm too busy now, flip and walk away, because it's not worth it, and find somebody that will answer your questions.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Yeah. The more we work together and, help each other out, the better the industry is going to be, the better the shows will be, and the better breeders everybody will be.
That's exactly true. Here's a note about poop in gecko containers, deli cups. J-Bug says, Wally says the poop that comes with the reptiles is free. And that's true. I do not charge for poop in reptile containers. Somebody that's new at vending a reptile show. Angie, I'm going to get your question too in just a second, but somebody new that's vending a reptile show for the first time, how about a couple of tips? How about a couple of pointers? How about a couple of, well, don't be dumb like Wally and forget your lights at home. What are some of the things that,
Well, first off, have lights. And the number of time I see people show up and they just don't have lights, and they expect the hall to be bright enough or any of that. And sure, I've been in the halls that are really super bright, and those are nice, and don't get me wrong, but you still want to show off and feature the animals that you have going on in your table. But if somebody also wants to pick it up and really check out a color pattern, they want to check out if they can see pores, any of that kind of stuff, you want to make that as easy as possible on them. You want to have those things. Have a great quality tablecloth, whether it has your name on it, it just looks good, something that's going to make those animals pop. So depending on what the rest of your table looks like, maybe a good solid black tablecloth is all you need, because now the colors pop because you got a lot of light colored animals. But on the other hand, we used to have a vendor that would vend with us all the time. I don't know if you know Jim, but Jim would always show up with a Green Bay Packers tablecloth, Steph plug, and he would show up with a Green Bay Packers tablecloth. Part of me thinks it was just him trying to, knock me because he knows I'm a Bears fan, but really, it was just because everybody would know, hey, I got to go talk to the guy with the Packers table. And a lot of times it's just having that little extra thing that makes you stand out just a little bit different than the rest of the guys. That'll really help. My other two little tidbits for everybody is bring somebody else with you. Even if you think you can run that table by yourself, you're going to have to go to the bathroom. You're going to want to go grab some lunch. You're going to get caught talking to somebody, and somebody might be able to walk away. Even if your significant other or best friend really doesn't know anything about the animals you're talking about, somebody to talk to is all that a lot of reptile people want. hey, that's a really cool crested gecko. And that'll just lead them into any conversation, and it can be long enough to keep that person at your table. And then my last and probably biggest point of advice is only sit down when you're eating. If you can do it, I know the reptile show can be long. I know it's, our show, VIP hours included, that's 6 hours. Plus you spend a bunch of time setting things up. But for my money, I want the guy that's right up front at the edge of that table, ready to engage me in conversation. Don't sit down unless you're eating, because I also don't want you just, face full of food hanging over the table trying to eat that way. But no, if you can sit, stand up and be right there ready to talk to them, that's the best way to do it.
That's not how, I'm sorry. That's not how I roll. I think I just shut down an app. Thank goodness I'm not running this on my phone.
Good.
You know me, and I'll tell this real quick story as quick as I can, because this is your show, not mine. But like our third or fourth show, my middle son was doing the show with me, and middle of the show, he gets up and he's gone. No big deal. He's washroom or whatever. Comes back with a hot dog and chips and soda and gets in his chair and then pulls it right up to the table. And I'm helping customers. Cool. He's taking a break. Customer, then no customers. He's done with lunch and he stands up and he pushes the chair back and he comes back to the table. And I looked at him and said, Jordan, that will never, ever, ever happen again on our table. Our number one focus is the customers and answering their questions. Our number two concern is selling animals, but number one is answering customers' questions. And when you're sitting there with, a hot dog and everything, that shows that you're not focused on that number one priority. So I'm a big believer in standing up if you can. If you can't, that's certainly, understandable and all, but stand up and show attention to the customers, because they might have questions on animal care and you need to be there to answer those questions. Tell me about the week leading up to SEWERFest, or the weeks leading up. What are you focused on? What are your, oh my gosh, I have to do this? And do you use spreadsheets? Do you have little 400,000 sticky notes on your walls next to your computer? How do you keep up with this stuff, man?
I definitely keep some notes, and there's some things that I have to track and all of that. Most of my planning, being that we go 3 a year, I've got a little bit of a privilege that I can do it the way that I do it. But beginning of, for this show, it's April 23rd. So right around the end of March, very beginning of April, I start looking at, is all of my advertising in line? Do I have all the things out I need on social media for posts? Do I have everything out that I need for the advertising? Because what we've learned and what we really feel is that the month leading up is when we want to really boost that advertising, that kind of an idea. If I get it out there too far ahead of time, there's enough other shows, but there's just enough other things going on in people's lives that it can get lost. So I like to try to hit that advertising right around about a month out there ahead of time. But then we just start working into, are all of the vendors, locked in? Do I know that I've got all of my tables filled? Those kinds of things. Responding and, seeing emails, it's a constant thing, for vendor stuff. But then it really kicks into gear about 2 weeks out from the show, because that's when it comes down to, I've got to create a table layout for all of these to know where everybody's going. Many vendors know where, they're in about the same, table space as they were in previous years. Sometimes that shifts 1 or 2 tables, things like that. But as we add new vendors, or a vendor decides he wants an extra table, that kind of a thing, we had a vendor this year that's been with us for probably 8-9 years, always done 1 table. And this year he goes, I think it's time for me to have 2 tables. Okay, well, that creates a problem, because people that were next to you now have to move, or you have to move, kind of thing. So we have to move those puzzle pieces around and all those kinds of things. So that all starts about 2 weeks out. One of the things that we've done at SEWERFest since the very beginning is we've provided all of our vendors with lunch and free beer at the show. It is Wisconsin, so we provide the beer, for all the vendors, have drinks. You guys should see Wally when it comes 4:30. Just had too many beers. We got to cut them off. But
up from under the table. Okay, go home.
I don't know if Wally's ever had a beer at the show, to be honest.
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Can't stay here. But anyways, I have to make sure all those things are in line. Do I have, have we ordered enough lunches for everybody at the show? Do we have all of those things, ready to go and all of that? But then there's also just some of the simple supplies that we use at the show, raffle tickets, name tags, things like that. So we make sure that we've got all of those things. We've got all the supplies that we need. This week is literally back and forth on emails, people, contacting me. What time does the show start? When is this happening? We had I don't want to say catastrophe, but we had a slight, kind of weird thing this year for this show, that somebody put the wrong date online for the show on a random website, had the wrong date for the show. And so then Google was telling people the show was next weekend.
God, no.
And so I was getting a bunch of people going, hey, Google says it's one day, but your website says it's another day. Well, first off, obviously I'm going to put my website right. But secondly, how do you not trust Google? I get it. That's why we're here. So, we're going to get you right. And so still banking on a great show that we're going to have this weekend. But there's always those questions that, pop up. How much is it to get in? Where exactly is Sturtevant? We get all those kinds of things. Can I bring my bearded dragon with because he likes to see all the people? The answer is no.
No.
As much as I understand that, no, we just can't allow that. But there's a lot of those little things where it's just constant questions coming out of the woodworks. But then also, I get to be the mean guy this week that I've already probably fielded 5-6 different vendors asking, any tables open up? Or, hey, I know it's late, but can I get a table? And people who've never vended before. And a lot of times I take it as, hey, we were already planning on doing something else. Things changed, and they really want to vend ours. And I love that because, they're excited to come be a part of SEWERFest, but I got to tell them no, and I hate it.
It's got to be really super hard and, to address those kind of concerns. But I think equally would be, the 23rd question. So how much does it cost to get into SEWERFest when, it's right there on your webpage? Where is, Sturtevant? And it's right there on your webpage. So, I'm being oversensitive, but I'm sure, at some point while you're trying to figure out the puzzle, answering those 43 questions that are the same has to be a little bit trying on you.
It definitely can be, but I also understand that everybody looks at things from a different view. And, when we talked earlier about, step outside of your table and look at what your table looks like, because you're only seeing it the way that you look at it. It's the same thing for me, that I'm only looking at things the same way that I look at it. My daughter's a freshman in college, and she's been, she's a marketing major in college. And so she's trying to really step up and help me out with the show. And she's seen a couple of things this year where she's been like, Dad, do you ever consider doing this? Or, hey, maybe we can try this. And it's, it's perfect because she's just seeing things from a different way. We talked about how I provide lunch, for all of the vendors. It's one of my things that I want to take care of the vendors, and so it's just been one of those nice gestures we've always wanted to do. And my daughter goes, yeah, but they'll serve that food to everybody, won't they? And I go, yeah, the hall sells it to everybody. She goes, why don't you tell people that? And I go, I don't know. I just never thought it was never an advertising thing. I felt I needed to advertise. And she goes, well, if you're showing up with your family and you can't get there until 11:30 and you have to worry about getting lunch, maybe that's something, we should include. And I went, we're including it from now on, And so it's just one of those things I didn't look at that way to know I needed to necessarily, put it out there.
We all need that second set of eyes looking at things, and hopefully Crystal in about not 2 years. She's already telling me things to change. So I've got that going for me. I'm going to throw Angie's question here. What makes SEWERFest special versus a different reptile show in your opinion? If you don't answer this question the way I think you're going to answer it, I'm going to answer for you when you're done.
I mean, the outright answer is the vendors. I mean, we've got great vendors. We've got all of those kinds of things. Because of 23 years of having vendors that want to be part of our event and part of what we do, they've helped make it special because they're just good people that want to be there. But to me, the other really big part that truly makes us different is the fact that it really is a captive bred only show. The fact that every person coming in there knows that reptile, that amphibian that they're going to buy it was bred by somebody. Somebody's work went into it. It didn't just come out of the wild where, you know, one, it's being ripped from its home, but two, it maybe is now too stressed out to eat. Maybe it's got internal parasites and maybe has a problem. And, you know, I just don't want to see an underknowledged keeper try to deal with that, try to have to overcome that. But I also don't want to see an experienced keeper now bring that animal home and get their entire collection infested. You know, even with a good quarantine protocol and things, stuff happens. You know, stuff can make it through. People, you slip once, you don't wash your hands as well as you should have. You know, that kind of thing. We all know how that can happen. So.
I can't agree with you more. I would say for me personally, for general, it's the vendors. It's the vendors. But for me personally, you know, I deal with weird geckos that nobody cares about. But I know there's a couple of other vendors that are, you know, nerdy out on geckos like that, and I'm going to find something weird at somebody else's table. So again, my comment earlier about NARBC, but not with all the crowds and everything. I think there's some very, very, very interesting animals at SEWERFest that you're not going to find at other shows. Personally, that's my thought.
And that really goes down to, like we talked about the really good quality of the vendors. You know, I've seen the jobber flipper vendors at some of the shows, and what gets me is those guys are just looking at dollar signs, and they're not looking at what they love about that species, what they love about, you know, those specific animals. And so when we have the true hardcore hobbyists that are just, you know, fully, you know, engulfed in this species or, you know, a group of animals, you know, you just see all that passion come out of them. And it's just a different experience buying from a person like that.
Yes. And I think that all the vendors there have that same passion. I'm going to throw my isopods and me on their question on the screen. Wally and Shane, can you share a positive, unexpected experience you've had at SEWERFest? This makes you think.
So the one that jumps out to me right away, and maybe it shouldn't be as unexpected as it could be, knowing the stigma around reptiles. But a few years ago, a woman comes to the show. Her kids wanted her, you know, wanted to go. So she was nice enough to bring the kids. We're not getting any reptiles, you know, one of those kinds of things. She was completely afraid of snakes, just completely afraid of snakes. Didn't want anything to do with it. And between myself and my old business partner, Sparky, we were able to calm this lady down, you know, and we got talking to her somehow. And we got calmed her down. We may have bribed her and given her a beer and got her holding a snake, and she was no problem with it. And we just, you know, I wouldn't have expected that you would come to the reptile show and be so completely afraid of snakes that you were just not going to do anything with it, but just walk down the middle of the aisle because you were going to be a good mom. But, you know, we were able to get her to overcome that and go, okay, this isn't so bad. You know, we can deal with this.
I love reptile shows. And I think the very first time that I actually got past, you know, okay, here's all my animals in cups, I actually brought Speckles, one of my crested geckos that I could take out and let people handle. And I think the very first time I did, took it out, and I remember this. And again, this is many, many years ago, but, you know, a family walked by and the kids are all, oh, geckos, this is so cool. Can I hold one? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let me bring this one out. And when I did that and I opened up the container, I saw the parents, both parents, do one of these, you know, just take that step or two back, like, you kids can touch this. Yeah, I'm not gonna. So at that point, it's like game on. The kids are going to hold it. They don't care. They don't know any better. But the parents have some kind of a fear going. So let the kids play and then hold Speckles. Okay, thank you for holding. This is so cool that you got to hold Speckles. Mom, Dad, would you like to? No, gosh, no, I don't want to. Okay, how about if I just hold Speckles? Would you like to? And for about 5 minutes, I got them from, you know, touching the tail, touching the back, to walking across the gecko from hand to hand, and just, you know, fully enamored and just loving the experience. And I don't know if they bought that day or not, that doesn't matter. It was just seeing that, you know, I have these huge fears like I do with spiders, but overcoming that and just holding a gecko in their hands and, you know, sharing that experience, that obviously the kids' excitement had as well for being at a reptile show like that. So that's my cool experience.
So I wasn't ignoring you there,
Oh.
looking away. I think we can get this in here, but I'm pretty sure that's Speckles right there.
Oh my gosh, I'm sure it is. Oh man. I don't get, unfortunately, I can't, and I don't get too attached to specific animals here. But Speckles was one that, over and over and over at these shows, people would walk up and not say, "Hi, Wally, how are you doing?" But we're Speckles. And Speckles was the type of gecko that I could put on a light and talk to somebody, and a half hour later go, "Oh, shoot, I forgot all about Speckles." And here's Speckles sitting on the light, and people are walking by and just touching him on the head and walking past. And so when we lost Speckles, that was kind of a big deal here. It was hard to get over. And now we have Poppy Seed, who will, start getting entrenched in the whole, relationship with customers. So
awesome.
That was cool that you showed that. Thank you very much. We talked about leading up, and I'm not going to hold you here for another 4 hours, although Frank the Tank probably will say, let's go 24. But you talked about the days leading up to the show. Tell me about the day. Here's the thing with you that's just simply amazing. I'm doing a show, I'm focused, and leave me alone because I have things to do. Stop bothering me. I don't say that, but I'm thinking, don't bother me because I have all this stuff. And your day of the show, and you're walking around, hey, how you doing? How's it going? And you're talking to people, and like not a care in the world. How is that? How do you do that? How do you not worry about everything going on? And how are you so prepared day of show that you have time to walk around and talk to everybody?
So, obviously 23 years of doing this, you've gotten used to what are my routines, what are my things that I get used to. So, you know what you're going to kind of expect and all of that. But I've also just really, really tried as the years go on. I sometimes like to remind myself of a dumb little mantra. It is what it is, and this, it is what it is. We're here.
It is what it is.
At that point, there's only so much I can do to affect that day. And so instead of trying to worry about, affecting that day, and don't worry, or don't take it wrong. There's a lot going on behind the scenes and all of that, where I'm just sitting there going, what about this? What do I do there? What, how do I fix that? And so sometimes I'm always trying to make those notes of, I can't fix it for today, but how do I make it better for August? How do I make it better for November? And so we try to make those adjustments, but also I just love seeing the people. I love seeing everybody. I'm a people person. I like getting out there and talking. And so it's great to be able to wander around and just, if anything, I truly mean this, but getting the ability to walk up to somebody and they go, Shane, it was a great show. Whatever I was just worried about, I don't have to worry about now because they just calmed it. And so if anything, sometimes I'll go up to somebody when I've just had a problem or I think I've had a problem, and I go, how's the show going? And I want them to go, amazing. Because that's what I need. That's that actual just like pick me up, happy sauce that makes it all come good.
I'm making notes. So you say that you don't really worry about stuff, and it doesn't, especially when people say, "Oh, this is a great show." So make sure you say to Shane, "The show sucked, and it was the worst experience of my life." Okay, got that.
I will be. If you tell me that, no lie. Every time somebody tells me, show wasn't very good for me today, I then have to do a full analysis of, okay, well, why wasn't it good for him? What was it? Is it the type of animals that vendor brought? Or, oh, wait, there was somebody else across the aisle and she had similar animals, but she had leftover stock. So she's selling at a discounted price. Sometimes you gotta play all those little parts, but I'll fret about how do I make sure he doesn't have that as a problem again for a week, 2 weeks. Just how do we write it?
It's hard, and a tip, I think that you're saying here is that you see an issue and you think about it and think about how to improve it. Not like this stinks and it was a fail. You think about, it went wrong, but how do we fix it for the next one? And I can't stress this enough. my point about talking to 3 different experts or people that know what they're talking about. My other point is, after a show, if you're a vendor, if you're a breeder, you're a vendor, you do a show, get in the car, don't reach into your pocket. Nobody cares about the money that you made or didn't make or whatever, but grab a little notebook or talk to your partner or somebody that came to the show with you and say, okay, what didn't go so well? I don't care about the things that went well, because we'll remember those, but we're going to forget the things that didn't go good. Okay, what did the skirt was a Green Bay Packers skirt, and it should have been black. Make notes of the things that you can change for the next show, and then take that notebook and keep it, handy, a post-it note or something, so that you can make those changes before the next show. So, but you have a good point that you just can't dwell on it. When you're at a show, you can't dwell on it. You have to just kind of make notes and deal with it in the next show. That's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I keep a note going in my phone. It's got a little note section in there. So as the show goes on, I write those things down so they're not just sitting in my head, but also so that way when Tuesday rolls around, I can just go, why was I mad at 1 o'clock at the show? Like, because otherwise you were just mad and it got you nowhere. So we got to have a resolution.
Why was I this close to just kicking Wally out of the show with 3 hours left? You just mentioned the day after. So, it's Sunday, 6 p.m. Everybody's gone. Well, probably everybody's gone except Wally's sleeping under the table, but everybody's gone out of the show. Is your mind blank? Do you go, done, I'm releasing? So we'll do the show. And after the show, it's pretty much for me, I'm unplugging and going and watching the Flintstones or something, because I'm shutting down for probably a couple of hours. So that night, the next day, are you shutting down?
I will tell you that by the time 5:30 rolls around, my mind couldn't be more blank, and that's the honest truth. To the point that often I look at my wife and I go, Beth, can you just drive home? Can you, because I don't even want to focus on the road, and I just want to kind of just mentally check out for a little bit and just kind of let myself just relax on it all and kind of do my own little thing, and it works out really well. So. But yeah, you definitely just have to kind of just go, it's all done, just kind of let it be and let myself just really kind of settle down on it.
Never, too high, never too low, and just kind of flow with it, and then deal, like you said, with the notes afterwards. We have a question. This is a great question from Dope Critters. They're asking, what do you do as far as permits on specific animals that need them?
So the interesting thing about Wisconsin is generally as an overall whole, the state of Wisconsin, there's almost nothing you need a permit on. The animals that are native, if they're not a color morph, you can't sell them. So there's no permit. You just can't do it. Things that are non-native, you can sell them, pretty much any of them. And so there's very, very few permits that way. The biggest thing is that out-of-state vendors have to have a certificate of veterinary inspection. So that's on the vendors to make sure that they acquire that. But we're kind of lucky that in the state of Wisconsin, when it comes to the animals, there's a little bit of that just free flow. People are going to do the right thing by them, and less permit for those. So it's not as big of a thing for us to worry about it. So not one that we have to worry about as much.
Perfect answer. Kind of a way down in the weeds kind of thing is, if you're selling isopods and you're selling to somebody out of state, you technically have to have a permit. You have to have the permits, and you have to hand the person your permit numbers, blah, blah, blah. We do that anyways, so we'll sell some isopods, we'll hand out that sheet. Here's our permit number. I think we have it handy, if nothing more. Nanette does all that stuff. I'm so removed from that. So I think that we have that information handy for isopods, but that's so specific and kind of, I don't know, technically if everybody does it, they should, but anyways.
It's a really interesting thing. It's a part that most people, I don't think, really understand. Anything that could be considered an invasive insect and I know isopods aren't insects, but anything that could be an invasive bug and could affect the agricultural industry has to be regulated with interstate transport. So if you ever buy a box of 1,000 crickets, every vendor for the box of 1,000 crickets has a license code on the side of that box. You know, they're all licensed, so they all know that they can go across state lines, and they all get treated completely different than all the rest of the bug people or the lizard people that are out there. They all have their own little thing where they're all, you know, having to do it that way. So it's a good point.
Excellent, excellent. Angie, I have this question on my list too, and we're going to hit it right now. Has anything unexpectedly bad ever happened at SEWERFest? I mentioned my lights and forgetting my lights. That's all on me. But Sharon, anything unexpectedly bad ever happened at SEWERFest that you can think of?
How long did you want to keep going on this? Worst case scenario, we've had people steal, and you know, that's by all means that's the worst thing that we could ever have. You know, great vendors that are working to do everything they can to make sure they're on top of stuff, and to have somebody steal from them is it's just horrible. And so I hate that. That's obviously a big downfall for me. I've had vendors not want to pay attention to the rules, you know, some things like that, where we've got to deal with, you know, those kinds of things. Those are, you know, unexpected, because we hope everybody's going to be, you know, good people and all of that. But admittingly, worst unexpected, you know, thing is, you know, is people stealing. A joke, the best unexpected bad good. The very, very first year we held the show at the Fountain Banquet Hall, I got a call from the lady who ran the hall the next day on Monday morning. And she goes, "Shane, we found a red-tailed boa after the show."
No way.
Baby red-tailed boa. And I'm just thinking, we're never coming back to this banquet hall again. They hold weddings. We're done. This is horrible. And I go, yeah, what can I do? Do you know where it was? I can maybe find the right breeder. And she goes, "Oh, no worries. Can you just tell me what store I should go buy the products for it? Because I'm just going to keep it myself because I found it." And I went, "Whoa. Best solution ever." She's
win-win. Done.
Win. We've got her on our side now, you know, kind of a thing. And yes, sadly, something figured out how to escape its enclosure, and it's a worst case scenario that we don't want any of those animals getting, you know, loose like that. And, you know, we've asked the breeders to up their game to make sure those things don't happen. And I haven't seen one now, and knock on wood, you know, 15 years, I haven't had anything like that. But yeah, it was you know, one of those unexpected bad good, you know, quick turns.
I can imagine the phone call and it going something like, "We found this red-tailed boa. If you would turn to your contract, section 3, paragraph 4, herein we're out through which no longer and becoming just a nightmare." That is cool. That is such a great story. Oh my gosh. Very cool. I'm going to jump back over to mine. Gosh, Angie just stole my, I think, okay. Angie stole my last real kind of question. I'm going to get into a couple of really quick things here. Give our viewers 1 or 2 tips if they are going to a reptile show for the very first time. We kind of talked a little bit about this, but give us 1 tip. If you're coming to a reptile show for the very first time, what should you be doing?
So I would tell you my best tip that I think nobody ever talks about is have a cooler in the car. And whether it's cold months, hot months, any time of the year, have a cooler in the car. And it serves a couple of purposes. First and foremost, depending on what the weather is and where we've got the changes in the weather, we want to make sure that that animal is nice and warm if it's cold outside. You know, this weekend for SEWERFest, we're finding this weekend at SEWERFest, we're looking at about a 45, degree, high temperature. Somebody wants to stop for lunch, dinner on the way home. They leave animals in the car. It's going to get cold. It's just not an ideal situation for your animal. August rolls around. It's going to be 90. We can end up with the exact opposite problem. So have a cooler in the car. The other reason we recommend it is we just don't want anybody seeing your animals in the car when you do stop for gas real quick and somebody getting worried about it, anything, or maybe trying to break into your car. So nice little cooler, have that in the car, be ready for it. My other tip is if it's a good reptile show, most of us are, leave your stroller at home. And I hate to say that. Bring the kids. I want your kids there. I want them to be able to see it and to enjoy it. But you're going to get mad that you can't get your stroller to maneuver as well as you would have liked. And the other people are going to get mad when you keep banging into their ankles with the stroller, because it's inevitable you're going to. I don't hate you for the situation. I don't hate you for doing it. I hate the situation because you have to, but it just is what it is. It's going to be a big crowd, and it's just not an ideal situation for a stroller. Kids that small, get yourself one of the little kid backpacks or front packs, carry them around. But otherwise, get them down at the table level so they can see the animals, so they can enjoy it. It's a great place for them to be able to have it. Let them be up front with those animals.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, eye level. What an outstanding tip. Your very first tip was outstanding with the cooler. I'll tag onto that and say, what we used to do at reptile shows, we still do it at reptile shows. We'll bring something, cooler like that. Go to a fish store and say, hey, do you have any coolers? They get fish in all the time with those styros. But also take an empty water bottle with you. And then as you're ready to leave, go into the bathroom, fill it with not hot water. Don't fill it with hot water. Fill it with room temperature water, lukewarm water. Wrap it with a couple of paper, tighten it, wrap it a couple of times, and then use that in the cooler just to kind of try to maintain. It's kind of like a cryo pack. It'll maintain the temperature in that cooler a little bit better. Don't use hot water. I've made that mistake. Animals were fine, but you could tell it was a little bit warm in that box. How about giving us one or two tips on this is my very first reptile show, and I'm doing SEWERFest. I have no idea what to do. I kind of have an idea, but give me a kind of here's something you should think about kind of tip.
So my biggest tip is take in the whole show. Try to see everything. Don't get overwhelmed, especially if you're the first person that you got to buy right away. You got to do any of that. Wander the show, see it all. We try to do everything we can to make sure that the leopard geckos are spread across the whole show. So that way you don't just walk down an aisle of leopard geckos and then feel like, oh, that's all I see. Or you give up on an aisle and the guy in the middle has corn snakes and that was the thing you were looking for. So take the whole show in and then kind of make a game plan of what looked the best. Who do you want to go back and talk to? Who is it that you want to engage with now to be able to figure out what it is that you want? And there's two routes you want to take with this, especially if you're a new first-time visitor to the show. If you think it's going to take you time and you're going to need plenty of time to be able to do that path, to be able to do that, come early. We offer a VIP admission, so you can get in a little bit early and you can see those things. So give yourself that maximum time. On the other hand, if you don't think it's going to take you a lot of time because you're really specifically looking for a leopard gecko, so you don't need to look at all the tables, so you're going to walk through the show and only look at the leopard gecko tables, come a little bit later, less crowd. You're not going to be fighting to get up close to see it, that kind of a thing. But then also at the end of the show, you go up to Wally and you go, hey, Wally, I noticed you've only got 2 leopard geckos left. Wally might be willing to give you a better deal because he wants to get rid of them quicker. Or he doesn't want to, those are 2 less leopard geckos that he's got to feed, and he might look at it that way. That kind of thing. And so,
end of show. Catch me the 5 minutes after it starts. Whole table, $10. Let's go.
And so there's just a little bit of a different game plan that you can make depending on, what time you arrive at the show as well. If you show up early, you're gonna have more time to really inspect everything. If you come a little bit later, it's gonna be a little bit less crowd. You're not gonna have to fight your way, but you're gonna have a little bit less selection. So you just got to keep that in mind.
Love those ideas. I said that question a little bit wrong. What if I'm selling at the show for the very first time? I'm coming as a breeder. I'm going to put, my animals on the table. Is there a tip that you can think of for that very first time seller at a reptile show? Something that, we talked about the skirt, we talked about, lights, obviously. Something else, some little tip that you'd say, here's maybe what might increase your sales just a little bit if you thought about doing something like this.
So increasing sales. Okay. So there's almost 2 answers I'll give you. One, if you're trying to increase sales, obviously the animals have to be very easy to see. So however your enclosures are, all of that, But even more importantly, the price has to be easy to see. Don't
Yeah.
hide the price. As much as you're trying to be, tricky and you're going to put the price on the back. I've worked with retailers enough. You put the pricing on the back of the product so they have to pick it up and they have to look at it. But at a reptile show, when everything's on a table and I might have to fight a crowd or I might have to do any of that, have that price so it's easy enough to see if your animal is worth that value that you put on it. The customer is going to see that and they're going to engage you because of it. They're going to see it and go, that Chihuahua is worth $300. That, chameleon is worth $150. They're going to see that and they're going to make that purchase, or they're going to make that engagement with you to be able to see that. And so make sure everybody can know exactly what that price is. Don't make it, so small or any of that nobody can tell what it is. My other, and it's oddly, sadly, one of those things we still have to talk about is, no matter what you plan to take, for payment, bring lots of change and bring all denominations of change. I've seen guys show up and they only show up with tens and fives. And the first guy wants to buy a $40 gecko with a $100 bill.
Yes.
And it's like, well, now it's all gone. So make sure as a breeder that as a vendor, you've got plenty of change, all denominations ready to go for everybody.
I've only done that 3 times with you. I've only done it 3 times where I've walked up to you and said, I only brought 5s and somebody wants to pay me $100. So I'm learning. I'm getting there.
One day.
One day I will do it the right way. What's the next step for SEWERFest? Where do you see SEWERFest in 5 years, in 10 years? Your kids running it?
My kids doing it and me keeping all the money.
Outstanding.
Maybe that's where it is. No, in 5 years, I don't see how we're in the same venue. I hate to say that I love that venue, but just with as much support as we get from all of the breeders and everybody wanting to be a part of it, we need a larger venue. The challenge is I love being in Southeast Wisconsin, and as of right now, I just can't find I just don't see a bigger venue that's going to satisfy the needs that we want out of a show. So we'll be there with it. Maybe we go to a few more days so that way we can have a few more, options for people to look at it, but I don't like that answer either. So we'll see. I don't see SEWERFest going away. Like I said, I got 4 kids. I got a lot of colleges I got to pay for. So we'll be here. It helps.
And I'm always the person looking for ways to learn and ways to build and improve. And I have nothing for you right now. I 100% enjoy SEWERFest. I love the other shows in the area, but I have a special place for SEWERFest in my heart because we've been doing it for so long. And we've had, I'll say this very, very honestly, we've had our best shows at SEWERFest. And again, I think that's because, you run such a great show. You have great people coming in. You have great vendors there. And I personally gear up for SEWERFest. Other show organizers, don't be listening to this. I'll have to edit this part out. But I gear up for SEWERFest a little bit more than the other shows because I know that, I'm competing with other people that have just super quality animals too. And it's kind of my way to show, off what we're doing at SEWERFest. So I appreciate everything that you do with SEWERFest, and I don't have anything for an improvement at all.
I appreciate all the compliments, but I truly mean it. If there's anything that you say, you think, hey, you ever consider this, or we think this could be better, any of that, I'm all ears. I'd love to listen to it. Normally after the show's over, I'm going to send an email out and I'll go, anything we can do better, you let me know. I'll make posts on social media. If you came, what worked, what didn't work. If you didn't come to the show, why not? Why aren't you coming to our show? I think somebody said in there, that they only live 2 hours away and they've never been to the show. 2 hours can be a long distance to a lot of people. 2 hours to me is what I do on an everyday basis. I drove 6 hours today. There's a lot of different things. People have different priorities, but I want to know if you're within a half hour of our show and you keep a reptile, why have you never been there? I'd love to know why. I'd love to know. And if it's because you hadn't heard about us up until now, I blame Wally. But hopefully that's not it. But if there's a reason that you haven't been able to make it, let me know.
Yes, absolutely. And the only way to fix something is to make the wheel a little squeaky sometimes. But I completely agree with you. A half hour I don't feel is out of the way. 2 hours, 2 hours for SEWERFest, in my opinion, is adequate. It's a drive, but it's well worth the time. Well worth the time. Angie is asking, do you ever plan to have more shows in a year than what you currently have?
Adding more shows is never a plan of mine. Sparky, my old business partner, will tell you all the time, it was his idea to add the April show. I told him it was a bad idea. I'm wrong. He was right.
I'm glad you did. For us, April seems like that tax season continuing, money coming in for people. And we always do really, really well in the early parts of the year. So thank you very much for having an April show.
My logic for not having more shows is currently I like the separation we have between all of our shows. It's about 3 months. And the logic then would be is that we would add one somewhere around January. And I'm a Midwest guy. I've been here, my entire life. Midwest in January, I don't want to ask anybody to plan to come to the reptile show. And then we get the snowstorm, we get and I know it's a lot of what ifs, but I just don't want to plan around that. And the biggest concern I would have is, Wally, you're an hour and a half, 2 hours from, the show. And, it's not the worst thing, but if I get the vendor that drove 5-6 hours, Pangea coming over from Michigan, and they don't know that there's a snowstorm that's going to sneak up and it could affect them. And now, they've gone off the road or something. I just wouldn't be able to live with myself, being able to go at something that way.
And what they say is stuff happens, but you ever plan to expand SEWERFest to other areas?
I've definitely considered it. It's definitely something that is more likely to happen than more dates. I have a lot of respect for other people who run reptile shows. So I also don't want to step on anybody's toes. I don't want to go in to a market where somebody's already got a really good, plan inside of there, those kinds of things. I'll admit I was waiting on a little bit pins and needles, trying to find out where Dylan was going to announce where he was having his new show location, just to see how that would affect anything I was thinking about. Sure. Because I wouldn't want to do that to him. That's just not the way that I want business to work. I believe that competition is good for everybody.
Yeah.
And so I'll be a better show when he's a better show. Him being a better show makes me want to be better. And so I will always, take those as, constructive criticism without it ever being a criticism. What he did well, I got to do it better now. Even if nobody said it was, and I, I expect nothing less than for the other shows to want to go and be better as well, because that's what we should all, be striving for. So I am considering other locations, things like that. We've got a pretty good standard as far as what kind of a venue I'd want to be in. But if anybody's got an idea for a place that they think is missing, a reptile show and, could be able to satisfy what it is that we do, feel free, reach out to me, shows@sewerfest.com. We're on Facebook, website. You can reach us, Instagram, so we're out there.
Perfect. And absolutely contact Shane and let him know your concerns, that you're happy with, going to a show or vending a show. If you're a vendor, give people feedback, give Shane some feedback. We're going to do something right now because you just answered my last question. So I have nothing left to ask you anymore, but we're going to do something right now that I do with all of our guests, and that's called Hit It or Quit It. So you get to answer like one sentence, and that's all you get to answer here.
Okay.
I'm going to read off some questions, or not 100 questions, because we've already, I constantly say an hour. I'm going to keep this at an hour. Feels comfortable. You're here an hour and 43 minutes. So I apologize for dragging you through all this after 6 hours of driving, and I'm sure a ton of emails to handle tonight, but we'll keep this quick. What's your favorite food?
I'm a Mexican food guy, so probably enchiladas.
Excellent. What's your favorite TV show that you've binge watched over the last 10 years?
over the last 10 years. Oh, probably Big Bang Theory, Seinfeld, Office. Which one? I get to pick one. Big Bang Theory.
Cool. We didn't start watching Big Bang until about 2 years ago, and we did the same thing. Just watched every one that we could catch. What's cool? And I think I know this answer, but what's cool? A souped up 64 CUDA or a 23 BMW?
Oh, the CUDA.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. I can see you just kind of sitting back, hand over the wheel.
Honestly, if I can find a place to get it or do it, it'd be late 60s Mustang, but that's the dream old car, antique car.
Love it. I would be a 70s Roadrunner or Duster, and it would have to be either yellow or green.
Very
crickets.
Nice.
Crickets, blessing or curse?
I'm allergic to crickets. I can't stand the smell of roaches, so I buy crickets.
All right.
But I make my 15-year-old feed them off.
You're working with the animals, or in your case, you're driving 6 hours. What do you turn on your radio? What do you listen to? What gets you going? What gets you excited? What kind of music genre do you listen to?
So it's actually probably a podcast these days. I'm probably listening to some sort of random podcast. If it's music, I'm a rock guy. Aerosmith's favorite band all time. So I like pretty much any kind of rock, but it'd be rock. But the reality is, driving in the car and doing stuff with the animals, it's probably a podcast.
Excellent.
I know you said one sentence, but my wife says I talk too much. And so the podcasts make me feel like I'm in a conversation. So that's what my wife says why I have to listen to podcasts and like sports talk radio and things.
Nice. What's your least favorite music genre?
Oh, country.
Country? I can see that. New country, is old country okay? Willie and Waylon?
See, my mom was a big Willie Nelson fan. I've been to the Willie concert. Willie comes on. I can deal with some Willie. There's just something about him. But overall, like, it's just probably stops at Willie.
Yeah.
Everything else is just both of my parents listened to a lot of country. It just was never for me.
So you get home and you're not flipping on Hee Haw, trying to find Hee Haw somewhere?
No, that was not one for me at all.
A little picking and a little grinning? No.
I am named after an old country western movie, but
we'll come back to that later.
You've never seen the movie Shane?
Yeah, I was going to say we'll come back to, I see what you did there. Yeah,
see what you did there. Funny. Good job. A lot of 25-year-olds going, what are they talking about?
What the? I'm lost. I'm out. I think that's all the questions I have for you. I keep looking at my notes, but one thing that I like to do is, and you kind of mentioned this, but I want you to do it again. How can we find you? How can we say, Shane, SEWERFest is the greatest thing since sliced bread? Or, that one vendor that has the red crested gecko on their banner, kick them the heck out of your shows because they suck. How can people get in contact with you?
So we're on Facebook, SEWERFest. You can find us on there. Don't go to the one that's for the weird camping event down in North Carolina. That's a completely different event. And if you're those people, I'm really sorry. I can't sell you campsites to that. And then we're also on Instagram for SEWERFest. And then email is shows@sewerfest.com.
And somebody check the description before we end tonight, but let me know, did I put SEWERFest link for Facebook in the description? I think I did, but I'll add it if I didn't after the show. Finally, give us one thought. Leave something real positive for everybody about SEWERFest that you would like everybody to hit the end button on this live stream and go, that was a pretty cool thing that Shane shared with us about SEWERFest. Leave us with one parting thought about SEWERFest.
Um, 23 years, I don't see any chance of slowing down. My kids are keeping me more and more motivated to be part of it. They've really come into it. Losing Sparky as a business partner, that was a thing I knew I had to take on more of the responsibilities myself. But my kids have been able to step in and make that, a big part of me. SEWERFest is older than my kids. And so, just being able to pull that all together and have all those parts, it's just been a fun thing to know that, we were kind of the first reptile show in Wisconsin, to have any longevity. We're still here 23 years later. I welcome the other guys to kind of do their thing and do all of that. But I also just, relish in all of the support everybody gives us.
Outstanding. And I can't say enough, all that you've done for SEWERFest, all that you've done for the vendors, all that you're doing for the attendees, all that you're doing for the community. Thank you. Thank you very much. My Pods with me. Show up Sunday, and I'll meet you at the door and I'll pay for your VIP tickets.
Love it.
Shane, I can't say enough. Thank you very much. Show is Sunday. We've got 2 more shows this year. If you can't make Sunday, but come out Sunday, say hi to me, walk up to Shane and tell him how you feel SEWERFest is going and let him know. Shane, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I greatly appreciate your time, which is super valuable to you, and sharing for, oh my God, it's almost 2 hours. I greatly appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thanks for everything that you do. Thanks for being as great of a guy as you are. And thanks for supporting SEWERFest.
Thanks. Everyone, thank you for joining us tonight. I hope you learned a ton from Shane and also about SEWERFest and also about just reptile shows in general. We'll see you next live. Thanks, everybody. Good night. Thanks, Shane.
Thank you.